Good morning to you, Lauren. Thank you very much.
So let's firstly talk about the overall reputation of SAA.
Well, we do know that this is a state-owned entity. Obviously, a lot of money has been going in towards saving it, and it has had a lot of difficulty. Remember, South African Airways has a very robust history with regards to how it's been conducting its business. However, we know the controversies around the CEO and the chairperson and so forth. So all these things have been bubbling under. Now, all of a sudden, the Women's League in the ANC has come out very strongly to say there are reports, and whether alleged or not, we don't know. But what we do know is a factual statement is what came out 2 months ago, that they're spending less than 2% on black-owned enterprises. And so, therefore, it means all this has now come out. And so it has obviously upset the ANC Women's League. But not only that, it would upset, I think, business in general, because the business community will be concerned that a state-owned entity has made very little progress when it comes to actual transformation. 10 billion rand a year is spent on fuel at South African Airways, and apparently only 5 companies who have been there and had contracts over 82 years have been supplying that particular company. So that just shows you that there's been a lack of transformation. And we're talking about pilots the other time. We were talking about how many black pilots does South African Airways actually have. And unfortunately, it's not enough of the black pilots that you have. And so therefore, it seems like it's been very stagnant in moving towards transformation, and hence the reason why the Women's League has come out strongly condemning those particular reports that are coming out from the South African Airways.
I'm going to have to pause our discussion there as we turn now to the ANC Women's League Secretary General Moego Matuba, who joins us live on the phone line. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Prime. Why do you believe there should be a formal investigation into SAA when you could just ask the Ministry of Public Enterprises to act?
In actual fact, the ANC Women's League believes that there's a need for radical socio-economic transformation in our country. For us to can be able to do that is to audit and check where we are not performing as we are expected, and begin to say, do we comply with the pieces of legislation in our country? Do we benefiting from the procurement processes in that particular SAA? You still feel that it's only 2% of majority of South Africans. We therefore call on government or parliament, both government and parliament, either way, to do a commission of inquiry and investigate. It's not only going to be on SAA, but it will be on all state enterprise. We need a radical socio-economic transformation. After 22 years, there's still challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. And when you look at the face of that poverty, it's women in South Africa. Majority of them are black. We therefore call on government to act and do something about it. We are intending to submit our request to the office of the President later this afternoon to ensure that whatever that we call for as the ANC Women's League, it gets implemented by our deployees in government and also in parliament.
Now, the government has indeed committed itself to diversifying procurement to be more inclusive. Are you implying that SAA is undermining transformation here?
Hello, I can't hear you properly.
Sorry, let me repeat the question. Government has indeed committed itself to diversifying procurement to be more inclusive. Are you implying that SAA is undermining transformation here?
It's not even only SAA in the country. When you look at government procurement, when you look at state-owned enterprise, when you look at the private sector in the country, you still feel that there's a lack of transformation. And it shouldn't be only when we read speeches, it shouldn't be only when we address our people, but we take a proper action against those who are not complying in terms of our legislation. And if there are policy issues that we may want to put forward as the ANC Women's League, part of policy issues will belong to the Commission on Economic Transformation, and also will look at issues of education in the country. And again, compliance with the labor laws of this country, whether majority of companies whether majority of state-owned enterprise, including government, are complying with the employment, equity, and labor policies in the country.
Why are these accusations only coming out now?
It's not accusation. We have done our research. We have checked women business of radical economic transformation. We do have a mandate as women in the country that will make it on top of our agenda, women economic emancipation, and ensure that the ANC radically transforms the economy.
Now, this Bain & Company firm has been behind some major and very costly consultation and changes at SAA. Why do you think we are still using it?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear me?
I can't hear you properly. I'm driving.
Okay, let me try repeat that, and if you can't hear me, then we'll have to move on. But this Bain & Company firm has been behind some major and very costly consultations and changes at SAA. Why do you think we're still using it?
We still have to do our thorough investigations and get answers. We think that the Commission of Inquiry will begin to give South Africans clarity and answers to many questions that you have, that I have, that majority of South Africans have in terms of such companies in the country.
And then lastly, before we let you go, why do you believe the Ernst & Young report is being kept away from the public?
In all fairness, this information was not made available. There were investigations, there were reports. When did you see those reports being published? We have never seen them published. We have done our research at the ANC, and we continue to do that in all state-owned enterprises and make sure that what is not published, it gets published. And information belongs to us as South Africans. We believe that whatever that has been investigated should be put on the table. South Africans deserve the reports and action in terms of the outcomes of a particular investigation.
Ms. Mathuba, thank you so much for your time here on Morning Prime. That is the ANC Women's League Secretary General there. Let's move now to our live chat with Clive Ramatabila-Smith, who is our business editor. Morning, welcome back. There, what are your thoughts there of what the ANC Women's League Secretary General had to say?
For me, it's part of an extension of what the African National Congress is trying to fight about. We know that the January 8th statement was bold and talked about transformation in the highest esteem. And not only that, they were very serious about the actions that they will be taking as soon as Congress is done at the end of December 2017. I think it's the realization of the realities that have been taking place in the country. 23 years into democracy, very little has been seemed to be done for the majority of the country, and so therefore they feel that perhaps maybe taking on stringent measures and making sure that you curb out corruption are some of the things that have not been tackled enough. And so it's not just SAA. I mean, we're talking about state-owned enterprises that should be strategically positioned to be able to support small to medium enterprises that would strengthen our middle class and make sure, obviously, the economy grows. You would have heard as well, the president made a very bold statement talking about a 2.9% growth prospect for 2017. That in itself, Lauren, is very, very indicative of what the actual plans of the African National Congress are for this year and what transformation and using its resources as much as possible to make sure that the country is transformed. And so if you don't see the rippling effects of these impacts or these initiatives, then unfortunately as government you seem not to be doing enough to tackle the issue of poverty, inequality, and also obviously unemployment.
Now, in your professional opinion, how accurate do you see these reports? You know, these reports that suggest internal and external forces who are trying to transform SAA on employment, equity and procurement.
Unfortunately, I haven't seen the Ernst & Young report. That would be interesting to see what they thought, because they're an independent house, aren't they? So they would be able to give an indication whether or not these things are actually happening, the corruption, the level of corruption. But I'll give you an example. If a contractor has been working with a state-owned entity for over 82 years without any change, And there's also suppliers who are varied, who are perhaps maybe even more better qualified in terms of triple BEE, and they're very much competent to deliver. You ask yourself, what kind of contract is that? Does that not eliminate competitiveness in industry? Does it not eliminate fairness and making sure that everybody gets an equal opportunity in front of each and every business that they participate in? And so for me, my concern would be, why would somebody have such a long-term contract, particularly with the state, because that could surely bring about a little bit of an uncertainty or rather uncomfortableness of what it is that the state is actually gaining from these particular people. So we must be able to demonstrate both in corporate governance and in fairness, and we can use all sorts of other procurement policies that have been put in place. We know that the government has tried. It's got the triple PFA, for example, that is supposed to be concentrating on providing assurance that 30% of all businesses that the state does with any entity should be for BEE companies. So if we don't see that happening, unfortunately, these unraveling discussions about the companies like your Braid, for example, and how long they've had contracts at SAA. You can talk about the former CEO receiving an amount of 232 million rand as a payout, which was tax-free, by the way. So all these things then start to, unfortunately, pile up. I call them a concoction of bad results that come out of SAA, and they then start underlying other questions like why then that the company is not profitable, why there's been mismanagement of funds, and all these things then therefore just draw, unfortunately, an unlikely picture. And the fact that we also know that they've been reliant quite heavily on state funding for them to survive.
Clive, thank you so much for your professional opinion there. We'd like you to stay in studio to comment more on our next story.